What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was neglected but a demon girl saved his life and fell in love with him? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. The A-class was buzzing with activity of all sorts. Ino, Sakura and most of the girls going crazy and wild with their proclamations of love towards either Sasuke Uchiha, the residential emo pretty boy, or Menma Namikaze, the hero of Konoha that saved it with his sister via being used as vessels of yin and yang halves of Kyuubi. Narumi Uzumaki, Menma's sister and second hero, was being pestered by her own fanbase, enjoying the well-deserved, as she believed, attention to her persona, just as her twin brother. After all, they were the children of 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and head of Uzumaki clan Kushina Uzumaki, both legends that have protected this village from Kyuubi. And they, their children, were the chosen ones to be the heroes of Konoha, to protect it by keeping Kyuubi's power in them and putting it in good use for Konoha. What higher honor and dignity there could be, being Konoha's pride and glory, and only they deserved it. Some of the students, like Shikamaru Nara and Shino Aburame, kept to themselves, trying their best not to get drawn into this chaos. Hinata Hyuga, young heiress of Hyuga clan, was silently taking quick glances at one person that was an object of her interest, who simply sat on his seat with a book, waiting for the day to end finally. The said person was one that stood out from the entire classroom because of several reasons. The first one being the fact of him being older than all of the kids in class by 3 years, including his heroic siblings. The second one was a seeming isolation of him, as there were several seats in front of him completely desolate, while he sat seemingly in the far edge of classroom, a seat usually reserved for those that didn't have the best behavior or the reputation, or both at the same time. And he did not have either, as Naruto Uzumaki, for that was his name, is considered to be a disgrace and seeming failure of clans Namikaze and Uzumaki, especially in front of his far more stellar and heroic siblings. Heroic, the very word had an infuriating effect on Naruto, for it constantly reminded him that those two brats were better than him, deserved more than him, and were loved by their parents far more. And Konoha's population was practically decreed to worship those two like they were deities. Menma and Narumi reveled in this, enjoyed themselves from the very childhood, with their ego and pride growing every year, as they themselves did, under careful and loving watch of their parents. And at the same time, out in the shadows stood a lonely and forgotten boy, whose purple eyes swelled with tears of sadness, hidden underneath his blood-red hair. Naruto, being 12 years old, couldn't even remember when did his parents stop caring for him completely, putting him out of their minds and hearts in place for their younger children. He couldn't remember the last time his father and mother even simply spent time together. Nor could he remember the moment when did he was fully taken out of their minds, as they stopped taking him out on celebrations, or even remember the fact that October 10th was not just Menma's and Narumi's birthday, but also their elder brother's, Naruto. Naruto could not remember it all, but he did remember well when his happy life entered its epilogue. Flashback. Namikaze Uzumaki residence, 5 years ago. 7-year-old Naruto was moving through the house with a book about chakra in his hand, hoping to read it outside in the yard. He could, of course, read it in the library, but the day was way too good to sit in the house, plus it was a book with practical application, one which he was going to put to use. Being the son of 2 legendary shinobi of Konoha, it was obvious that Naruto had wanted to be much like his parents, and the first thing every shinobi needed was an unlocked chakra. A couple of days ago Naruto did ask his parents to unlock it, but they turned him down, telling that he was still too young for this, and that it would be best to wait at least a year more. This statement saddened Naruto, as he had heard from some other kids that most get their chakra unlocked at age of 6 or 7. It didn't make much of sense to young Naruto, as to why would his parents not unlock his own chakra, especially when it was the right time anyway. Then he deduced that it was probably because of his dad being really busy as Hokage, while mom had to watch over the twins, so Naruto understood and decided to unlock his chakra on his own. Their library was filled with jutsu, books on techniques and much other stuff, including basics with chakra, so it was easy for Naruto to find the needed book and get ready for the important moment. Plus, if he did it on his own, Then his parents would probably be proud of him and treat him to his favorite dish in the world, ramen. Naruto had traversed the house quickly and was already at the entrance of yard, when he was stopped by the sight of his parents, Minato and Kushina, watching his younger siblings Menma, a copy of his dad with spiky blonde eyes and blue eyes, and Narumi, a small model of Kushina with her vibrant red straight hair and purple eyes, training. The sight had confused Naruto, to say the least, as he couldn't understand. Why would his parents start training his younger siblings over him? As he stepped onto the grass, Minato and Kushina quickly turned around and went to their eldest, curious to see him with a book. Naruto-kun, did you want something, dear? Kushina smiled to him, not noticing the perplexed and confused look of her eldest. If it's nothing important, can it wait? Menma-kun and Narumi-chan need our attention right now. Ka-chan, Tu-san, what's going on? Naruto bluntly asked of them, causing the two parents exchange looks with each other. What are Menma and Narumi doing? Your mother and I have decided that it would be best if we started their training a bit earlier, Naruto. Minato replied with smile to his son. You know that they hold both halves of Kyuubi, and it is very important that they had learned how to properly control their and its chakra early on. What is that you have there? Minato looked at his son's arms, before taking from him the book. Basics on chakra, Naruto, why would you need this? To unlock my chakra. Naruto simply said to Minato and Kushina. I thought that you were too busy and had no time, so. Naruto, we already had this talk before, dear. Kushina kneeled before him and kissed him on the forehead. I know that you want to make us both proud, but you are not yet ready for this. Just wait another year, and I promise you that we will unlock your chakra. But why not now? Naruto asked, being confused at the response after the sight in front of him. If Menma and Narumi can train, so can I, and I'm bigger than them. Naruto, we told you already that Menma and Narumi need to start earlier, and we have to make sure that they do everything properly. Just because you are older than them does not mean you are better than them. Kushina said in a more stern tone of voice, nearly making Naruto wince. Your father and I have decided, and that is it. Next year, we'll see if we can unlock your chakra and maybe let you train with twins. But Naruto couldn't even fully understand why his parents were stating that, but he was cut off again. Naruto, your mother has said it. Go back to your room and think about our words. You are a smart boy, you'll understand that we mean only good for you. Now, go. Minato softly, but with small force, said to his son, with Naruto giving up and turning around and walking back in the house, confused and saddened, while his parents turned back to the twins. Alright, Menma, Narumi, it's time that we've unlocked your chakra, so get ready. Unbeknownst to the parents, or the cheering twins, Naruto heard that, and it didn't make sense to him, while also saddening and, for the first time, making Naruto angry. As he went into his room, he played the entire conversation in his mind, trying to understand what his parents meant. His dad was right when he said that Naruto was smart, as he really was smart, smarter than even some kids twice his age. He was always good when it came down to picking on the details and small things, as well as observing the whole thing at the same time. He could understand that his siblings held Kyuubi in them, and because of this Mabe needed to be trained more than others. But couldn't his parents train him with them at the same time, or have one of them train him while the other one watches over the twins? At the very least, couldn't mom or dad have one of their shadow clones watch over him or twins, as Naruto knew they could make them and already saw it done? It did not make any sense to him, until he picked up on the word, better, from that entire talk. Dad once said that a shinobi should look underneath the obvious. Could it be that I should be better than Menma and Narumi? Naruto thought to himself, I am the eldest, and it means I have to be better than them. They didn't like me training with them, but what if I were to train not with them? It would be difficult, but not impossible. I'll need to get a couple more books, and find a good place to train. They probably just need a lot of space and I would only get in the way. And with those thoughts, Naruto, unknowingly to even himself, created a crack that would later become the abyss in relationships with his family. End flashback. Naruto really did think back then that if he were to become better, then his parents would be proud of him. After all, parents praised their kids all the time when they learned something new or had gotten better at something, especially on their own. He reasoned that his parents would be proud if he were to do the same thing and set out to become the best there was at being a shinobi, as just a couple of days later he found the desolate training field, many books on taijutsu, chakra, natures and more, and began to train. Naruto, though young, could understand that it was always better to train with someone who could watch over you, but even without it, he believed that he could do well. And through sweat, exhaustion, aching muscles, bleeding knuckles, pain all over his body, Naruto had done what many could only hope for. In mere 2 years, Naruto not only had unlocked his chakra, but already picked up the basic 3 academy techniques, learned how to balance the leaf, as well as tree and water walking, not to mention becoming adequate in genjutsu, taijutsu and ninjutsu for his age. He even learned how to make the shadow clone jutsu like his parents. Turns out, Naruto had not just a lot of chakra, but abnormally a lot, which meant that controlling it all was really hard, but he still managed to do so. Young Redhead believed that it was because of him being a member of Uzumaki clan, a clan known for possessing extremely large chakra reserves, as he had learned from books, for he sharpened his mind as well as his body. Days, weeks and months have passed for Naruto in endless trainings, studies and practices, which had served to alienate the young boy from his family and everyone else around him. He did not even notice that his parents had started spending less and less time with him, or that presents and congratulations on his birthday disappeared and the very day of his birth was forgotten. He did not notice when Konoha's civilians no longer had recognized him as son of Hokage and his wife, nor did he realize that to the most of the world he started to become nothing, including to his parents. Until that day, 3 years ago. Flashback. October 10th. The party was in full swing, as kids were having fun and congratulating the twins, while their parents, most of whom were heads of clans, conversed with Minato and Kushina, sharing drinks and eating food, while Jiraiya and Tsunade, the godparents of Menma and Narumi, gifted them their respective summoning contracts on Toad and Slug. The entire picture seemed absolutely perfect, save for the lone young boy with messy red hair and sad purple eyes standing aside and looking at this entire thing, and seeing that he was completely unwelcomed here. Just like a year before, he received neither the presents, nor congratulations, or even was called out. Back then, Naruto simply thought that everyone was too busy and they kinda forgot. Granted, it was a weak excuse, but it was something, because there was no way that his mom and dad would forget that this was also his birthday. Right? And now, Naruto was seeing the exact same thing happening before his eyes, but if back then it only confused and hurt a little. Now it hurt a lot, and made him feel angry. To see everyone just forget about him and go about this day like he did not even exist, especially his parents and twin siblings. It hurt a lot, especially considering that Naruto had put his mind and body through the most effective and best, in his own opinion, training course. In just 6 months, Naruto had learned more than his siblings did in all these 2 years under dad and mom, and now, Naruto could probably take on any genin and kick his butt. He may have not learned his dad's hummingbird style, or any Uzumaki style their mom had practiced, but he did learn Hapkido, Aikido, Wing Chun, even some have restricted only to Anbu Black Ops Krav Maga. His knuckles and legs were now covered in scarred skin, as he had literally trained to the bone, but the results were worth it. Hell, he even knew that he had fire and lightning affinities already and knew 3 C-rank jutsu from each affinity. And his siblings were getting all of this, while he was left out? His hand had clenched into a fist as his anger was starting to get the better of him, until he saw that his dad and mom were making an announcement, which piqued his interest. Thank you all, our dear friends, for coming today for this wonderful occasion. We are so grateful that you have attended tonight this celebration of our beloved twins Menma and Narumi's birthday. Minato started, not even noticing the small glare from his son at ignoring him. As you all know, in 2 years we will admit them to the Shinobi Academy, alongside all of your young children and heirs, the future shinobi and heroes of our village, who will carry on the will of fire. With that in mind, after much discussion and thought, my dear wife Kushina and I have decided that it was time to finally announce our decision about succession of our respective clans. Naruto cocked up his eyebrow up at this one. The laws state that the eldest child is an heir of clan or clans, so why would dad and mom make some decision? No, not after all this time, not this. Naruto's mind raced at the speed of a lightning, realizing what his parents were really meaning by this. 2 years to better myself, and they. As of today, Menma Namikaze shall be officially known as the heir of Namikaze clan, while my dear daughter Narumi shall lead clan Uzumaki after me. Kushina announced with a smile, as her children cheered, alongside the others, until someone forgotten not reminded of himself to them all. What the hell? Naruto literally shouted out loud, with the entire room turning towards him, as he was seething with fury and unbridled rage. Why the hell do Menma and Narumi get to be heirs? What about me? I am your eldest son. I am the one who deserves it, not them. Naruto, it's not what. Kushina had tried to calm him down, but at this point there was no stopping Naruto, as his rage was in full possession of him. It's not what I think. Do you think I'm dumb? You can't make those two heirs while I'm still part of both clans. This is robbery. Why the fuck do these two get everything, while I'm forgotten and seemingly non-existent to you all? Huh, that's cause you aren't born as hero, and you don't even know how to hold a kunai right. Menma joked, with others laughing up as well. Face it, Naruto, mom and dad are making you a favor, since you don't even have your chakra unlocked. You are simply not even capable of having it. Menma taunted, earning a new round of laughs. Why don't you fucking come over here and we'll see if have chakra or not, brat. Naruto clenched his fists as he was already making his way to Menma, before he was stopped by his mother. Naruto, that is enough. Go back to your room and… Kushina was ready to shout at him, but Naruto wasn't having any of it. No, why do you two do this to me? What have I done to you? Why did you forget about me? This is my birthday too and… As Naruto's eyes were starting to swell up with tears, Kushina stopped his rant, with her palm striking her son's cheek and sending him down to the floor. Naruto fell onto the floor, shaking in shock, as his widened eyes looked at his enraged mother. The burning pain on his cheek was nothing when compared to the looks of his parents, guests, kids and twins. All of their emotions shone clearly to him. Disappointment, anger, disgust and loathing. And not an ounce of pity or concern, not even from his parents. Especially not from his parents, as Kushina forcefully picked Naruto up by his arm and led him out, right in front of everyone. Naruto did not even resist, as they went to his room, with Kushina literally throwing him in, with Naruto hitting the floor, before she spoke up, ignoring the quiet sobs and whimper of her eldest child. I hope you are happy with yourself, Naruto, because you've ruined not only your brother and sister's birthday, but also your entry to the academy. You can also forget about any training or chakra unlocking, because after this disaster the only place you'll get it will be the academy, when you go there with the twins. Kushina coldly shouted at her son, who turned face her with the most heated glare he could muster. And don't even look at me like that, young man. It is your own fault and now you'll have to pay for your actions. I've already told you, that just because you are eldest, does not mean you are the better one, and Menma and Narumi are better than you. And because of that Minato and I've chose them over you as heirs. Now stay here and think about what you have done, and once you are done, you'll go and apologize to your siblings and us for what you have done today. With this, Kushina closed the door, nearly destroying it, leaving her son inside his dark room. Like hell I will, Naruto simply said into the darkness, as he got up and sat on his bed, contemplating everything that had happened. 2 years. 2 long, hard and painful years of training, studying and learning on his own, and all of it was for naught. Broken fingers, strained muscles, migraines, all of it meant absolutely nothing now, as he finally started to realize the simple, yet cruel fact to himself. His parents simply loved Menma and Narumi over him. There was no more place for him in their hearts, and he probably even helped it, as he didn't even often see them at home or outside of it, as he was training and they were training the twins. No, it was not his fault. Naruto clenched his fists in rage, before he shot upwards, sending his fist into the wall, roaring with all of his fury and rage. When his fist connected with the wall, streaks of blood appeared and went down the wall. Pain shot in his brain, but Naruto simply shrugged it off, as he saw his hand bloodied and his fingers not even able to move. Not the first time when he had gone overboard, and he knew that his knuckle would get better later, like it always did. But while his hand would heal, what had been done tonight? He would never let go of it. His parents. No, those two had made him to sacrifice 2 years of his life just to get better for them, and this is how they respond. It was now crystal clear that those two brats would forever and always be the favorites of Minato and Kushina, no matter what he had done to impress them or get their attention. It was completely and utterly pointless now for him to prove anything to them. To fucking hell with this. If those two idiots want to see Menma and Narumi as my betters, so fucking be it. Naruto angrily thought to himself. Disappoint them, my better. We'll see, Kushina, Minato. You can have your titles, fuck him. But I am not going to let it go, oh no. One day, I will make you regret this. Kyuubi or not, but I will make those brats regret your decision. I swear on my own blood, blood of Naruto fucking Uzumaki. Naruto gritted his teeth with a throaty growl escaping, akin to one of wolf, as he made his commitment. End flashback. His mother did keep her word, as no matter what, Naruto would not be admitted to the academy, even when he had filed everything that was required. Nobody in the academy would want to argue with Hokage's wife and Hokage himself, by extension, so Naruto had to wait 2 more years. And these 2 years were not happy ones, as after his outburst and disinheritance, Naruto had become a laughingstock of Konoha, a disgraced former heir, which threw a temper tantrum over being passed over his more prestigious and glorious younger siblings. People of all ages and every position would either whisper or speak behind his back about what a failure he was. Some of the dumber and bolder ones tried to pick on him, thinking he was easy picking. Naruto proved them wrong, many times over with them, their friends and buddies and whoever had tried to beat Naruto just for fun, being sent into hospitals with broken noses, bones, dislocated legs, shoulders and with enough black on them to play chess. Naruto had gotten in a fight with not just civilians, but also with members of clans, beating most of them into a pulp, and it felt good. It had allowed to vent out pent-up rage and anger, which Naruto had in plenty and more, thanks to this village, his siblings, Minato and Kushina, always reminding him who were his better. Of course, Naruto was also getting beaten from time to time, but each time he would simply get up and strike harder and faster at those that beat him. As if responding to his situation, rage and frustration, Naruto's body also started to change, speeding up the growth of bones, muscles and toughening them up. It was like every time Naruto was beaten, his body would adapt and grow stronger because of it. Couple that with near nerve-wrecking training regime Naruto set himself, by the time he got 12, he looked like he was 16 already. His chakra levels were also growing, and by now Naruto could say for certain that his chakra was on the same level as a regular jonin of this village. From what Naruto had deduced himself, it was probably due to some form of mutation of his Uzumaki bloodline, triggered by extreme stress and emotional distress, like with Sharingan of Uchiha clan. It was only a theory, but it was something that Naruto was willing to bet money on. And while his body and mind sharpened, his skills in combat and knowledge only grew. His relations with almost everyone in this village and his family deteriorated and became not just strained, but nearly on level of animosity. Anger and bitterness of Naruto towards his parents had never faded away, and he never forgave them, nor was he planning to, while Kushina and Minato, though sourly disappointed and distraught with their eldest, simply fully focused on their youngest kids, who continued to grow into stuck-up arrogant brats. People of the village now preferred to ignore Naruto and stay away from him, with many now taking to a liking of calling him a demon, due to his willingness and readiness to beat into a bloody pulp men and women, not even fearing incarceration, something that Naruto also became quite familiar with. At least twice a month he would end up in jail, either for another fight, or because someone had framed him for a crime or a particularly bad prank. Minato would get him out, but not before Naruto had spent at least 3 or 4 days behind the bars. After that, it would be the usual lecture about the pride of his clan and how he was acting childishly and he should know better. At this point, it had become practically a running gag, with Minato still thinking he could make Naruto better. By the time the academy had started, Naruto was already wishing that it ended, as it was nothing more but a constant repetition of already known history about founding, 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th Hokage, shinobi wars, all made with the clearest flavor of propaganda and painting Konoha as the best of the best, all thanks to their great and mighty will of fire. Academics were something more interesting, but soon too became not enough for Naruto, as he had studied them before. Overall, his hopes that academy would prove to be something useful were gone, and now he was simply waiting for the Friday, as he had filled up a report to take up the major examination on Genin. Fortunately, laws of Konoha allowed it to be done, thanks to 2nd Hokage for that, and Naruto was going to be spending next 3 years in the same class as those 2 brats, while he could be doing something more productive. He would most certainly be stuck as reserve genin, since this wasn't the time for team formations and examinations, but this still would be better. Plus, he would be able to finally get the hell out of his house, something he was looking forward to. Having had enough of the ruckus around him and knowing that bell would ring in a second, Naruto packed up his books and went out, ignoring some random shouts towards him. Tomorrow, he'll finally be able to put this whole miserable place behind him. As Naruto walked out of the building, he picked up on clear sounds of some brats shouting and a girl in distress. Curious, he went ahead to take a look at what was going on. It didn't take him long to see that about 4 14-year-old genins, all with red markings of Inuzuka on their faces, were picking on a young girl with long bright red hair and light blue eyes, dressed in a scarlet dress with silver lines followed by black short paints and sandals. She resembled Kushina, but only by hair color, as the girl looked close to nothing to that violent ogre, being very beautiful and cute in Naruto's eyes. She seemed to be his own age, but also seemed older, somehow, just like with him. "Oh, look what we have here, boys. A cutesy little student that wants to become a genin," one of the assailants had stated, as the others have chuckled. "And one from a wealthy and powerful family. What, you think that money can buy you this headband, eh, bimbo? Place please, I simply filed for an early exam and—" The girl stuttered, before one of the idiots had tried to grab her by a hip. "Wow, she's packing some nice sets right here. What do you say, guys, want to give the girl the preliminary exam?" The perverted laughter was enough for Naruto to indicate that the girl was in trouble. Contrary to popular belief, Naruto didn't pick fights with those that didn't ask for it, or threw the first punch. No, he only ever struck after someone had tried to hit him. After that, it was fair game in his book. He would give at time a chance to back off, but very few did in this village, so he had plenty of chances to beat people down. Still, while Naruto had very little love for the people in this place, he did, however, care for those being picked on because of their weakness. He absolutely loathed and hated people who liked proving their power and strength by picking on those weaker or meek of character. These people were made more than half of whom Naruto sent to hospitals, and now that number would increase, as he stepped forward and yanked the arm of the assailant and nearly broke it, getting the needed attention. "The lady's not interested," Naruto spoke in cold and threatening voice, drawing immediate attention to him. "Now get out of here, if you don't want to miss the next 2 Chunin exams." "And who the hell you think you are to boss us around?" The captured genin groaned, trying to get his hand out of the lock, but failing. "Hey, I know this head. It's Hokage's eldest brat, the one that got kicked out of inheritance in favor of his siblings." His friend on the left recognized Naruto. "You think we are scared of some weak-ass failure that doesn't even have his chakra on, eh? Word of advice. Split out of here, before we make you cry and wet your pants, boy. Clearly you haven't read the news, have you?" Naruto simply stated, before easily broke the wrist of his captive, making him cry out in pain, releasing his grip afterwards. "Well, let me show you why you should have." The next thing that followed was his friend on the left trying to throw a punch at Naruto, but he quickly used Kawarimi, replacing himself with the traumatized genin, who received a punch in the face, knocking him out. Naruto did not waste time, kicking in the knee one of the genins and sending a wrist into the second's face, breaking his nose. The first attacker had reached out for his kunai and ran towards Naruto, but a simple lock and disarming move on Redhead's part, and another idiot tastes his blood and dust after a headbutt. The one that got kicked in the knee lost his footing and knelt, before being introduced directly to Naruto's boot, knocking him out. The last one had tried to blindly attack Naruto with his kunai, but that didn't do him much, as a simple punch in the gut finished them off. Naruto sighed, as he turned his attention at a stunned girl before speaking up. "Are you okay, Ms.?" He spoke to her directly, breaking her stun, as she nodded to him. "Why yes, thank you." She nodded to him, looking at the beaten-up genins. "Won't you get into trouble because of this? They are genins and it is a capital crime to assault a shinobi like that. I'll probably spend a week or 2 in a cell for this after Hokage gets the wind about this. But better that than having these degenerates pick on women just to get their junk working again," Naruto said bluntly to the girl. "It's nothing new for me, so don't worry. Well, if they'll come asking, I'll simply tell them that you stepped up to stop them." She assured him with a cute smile. I am Akemi Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you." Naruto simply cocked his eyebrow upwards after hearing this. Naruto. Akemi quickly realized with whom she was talking to, but didn't deter from a small smile. "Pardon the blunt question, but are you sure you are an Uzumaki?" Last time I checked, the only Uzumaki were Kushina and Narumi, with me as unwelcomed addition. Though, your looks do make you look like quite an Uzumaki, so if anything, no offense if I'm mistaken. None taken, and yes, I am an Uzumaki, though not from your mother's branch of family. My father is from a separate branch of Uzumaki family, so you could say that we are distant cousins of sorts. She cleared up. My parents aren't very public, not like yours. Most people around here don't really ask him of his family name. Most people address me and my brother by our mother's second name, Azuma. She's Konoha's current chief medic, Aika Azuma. Maybe you've heard of her? We've met, multiple times, actually. Considering that she was actually the one that patched up his hands in his earliest days of training, Naruto was aware of Akemi's mom, and could see the resemblance. You said you had a brother. Is he around or? I am here, actually. This made Naruto and Akemi turn to face a young man with short silver hair and light blue eyes, dressed in gray vest with blue t-shirt underneath, black with light blue lining pants and sandals, who was walking to them. Ake-chan, I'm sorry that I didn't get here faster. Iruka-sensei wanted me to drop the tests off in teacher's office. I hope they didn't hurt you or? No, I am fine, only shaken a bit. Naruto-san here has handled them, Akemi said, with her brother looking around. I'll say that you have quite a direct way of handling these kinds of things, Naruto-san. Although, it does seem to have gotten the point to them. The man said to him with a smile, extending him a hand, surprising Naruto a bit. You have my thanks for protecting my sister's dignity, Naruto-san. I'm Hiryu Azuma, or Uzumaki, whichever you prefer. Naruto looked at the extended hand with a small tingle of suspicion, before accepting it, though a bit of hesitation. No problem, and simply Naruto will do. Hiryu nodded to him, as they released their hands. I'm kinda surprised. Not a lot of people in this village are willing to say more than 3 words to me, and even less say nice things to me, not that I blame them. Well, there aren't many persons that happen to save my little sister and not expect to win a favor or two from our parents. And if you don't mind, no honorifics on our regard, so we are all here feel equal. Hiryu said to him, looking at the young man, dressed in all black shirt and pants with boots. They own a tailor shop, Azuma's tailor shop, the one monopolizing the whole tailoring for shinobi and even Hokage, though it's dad that runs the place, while mom is working in hospital. Must be getting quite a lot of clients then. Naruto remarked in a seemingly uncaring manner, though not an impolite one. Are you 2 students here too? Yes, final year, to be precise. Hiryu answered. Pardon the question, Naruto, but I don't recall you being in our year. Were you held up in a year before or? No, I was simply sent into academy with the Kyuubi brats by Hokage and his wife, sorry about the language. Naruto said mostly to Akemi, who nodded. I'm sure you heard what the deal with me is, and I doubt that your parents would want you hanging around the likes of me, so maybe you best be on your way home, before someone sees you with me. Hey, actually, would you like to come along with us? I mean, we don't mind your company, and mom and dad wouldn't mind either. As a thank you for standing up to me. Akemi had a small blush on her cheeks and averted her eyes away from Naruto. If you want, dad would probably give a discount on one of his garments, or you could have dinner with us. I really don't think that it's a good idea. Naruto objected. I best be going, plus I've got a genin exam tomorrow. Well, I hope you don't mind that I also insist on you coming along, and you have nothing to fear. Mom and dad are good judges of character. And, as it happens, Akemi and I'll also be taking an exam tomorrow, so what's the harm in coming along? Hiryu insisted, with Naruto, though clearly not as comfortable with the idea as Hiryu and Akemi, deciding to agree, allowing Hiryu and Akemi to lead the way. So, it must be difficult, being the eldest in the entire group, with practically no one to speak with about things. That's actually the least uncomfortable thing. Trying to find anyone that isn't a stuck-up douche with a penchant for inferiority and superiority complex in this village, now that is really difficult for me. Naruto commented, as they moved along. Though, to be fair, my reputation and, less than restrained temper do put a big dent on my chances to get along with anyone in here. Even though Naruto heard people whispering and talking behind his back, he decided to ignore for now, as he didn't want to get his new acquaintances into trouble. Actually, you kinda remind me of Dad. You have a few things in common with him, Akemi said with a smile to him. He is usually a very nice person, but also has his moments from time to time. He says that Uzumaki blood is like liquid fire, waiting just for a spark to ignite it. I guess I'm not very much of an Uzumaki in that regard, since, well, I guess I take more after my mother in that regard. In that case you've got nothing to be ashamed of. She is a nice person, the nicest one to be perfectly honest with you. Naruto looked up at his scarred back of the right hand for a few seconds, with Hiryu and Akemi noticing them as well. Not a lot of people in here would simply heal you a broken palm and not look at you, like you are a piece of shit to them. Naruto said in a somewhat somber, deeper tone, with Hiryu speaking up. You do not have a lot friends, do you, Naruto? He asked of him bluntly, with Naruto shaking his head. Nope, I don't. Don't think ever even had any to begin with. Naruto admitted to them. The closest thing to a friend I ever had was old Lord Third, but after that day, I didn't really talk to him or anyone for that matter. You are actually the only people I've talked with for more than 2 minutes, or not got lectured, insulted, aggravated, or beaten by. I am sorry to hear that. You must be feeling terribly lonely, living like that. I can't even imagine how your parents even permit this. Akemi said with sympathy and sadness in her voice. Can't Lord Hokage or Lady Kushina do anything about it? They did, and here we are talking about it. Naruto responded with coldness and not so hidden anger. If you don't mind, I would appreciate if didn't talk about them, or their brats for that matter. I have issues with them, to put it bluntly. Of course, I'm sorry. I didn't think this through. Akemi apologized to him with a small bow, which Naruto shrugged off. Though to be quite honest with you, Naruto, you are actually nicer than Menma and Narumi, and more approachable, so to say. Those two things do not really apply to me all that much, especially the approachable part. Naruto argued. I disagree with you. Hiryu spoke up. We had an unpleasant run-in with them a couple of weeks back at our shop, when Lady Kushina came in for her dress. Let's just say, that unlike your brother and sister, you do not ogle perversely at Akemi and do not act like royalty. You are more down to earth. More like face in the dirt, but thanks. Naruto actually let out a small smile at this one, as they had finally came to the place, which looked like a large 3-story well-built building, with a sign of Azuma's tailor shop hanging above the door. You live in here? Yes, the first floor is used as a shop and workplace for Dad, with second and third floors being our home. Dad actually bought the entire place in one payment, as Mom had told us, and renovated it for our family. He used to be a Jonin shinobi, but decided to retire after he and Mom got married. Said that he has had enough of it. Hiryu explained to Naruto, who nodded to him. He and Lady Kushina were actually among the dozen kids that were sent from Uzushiogakure here as a part of the agreement between them and Konoha. Most of them didn't make it through the last Great Shinobi War, or left the village afterwards while he settled down here. I didn't even know there were 10 other Uzumaki living here at some point. Books didn't mention anything about it. Naruto remarked. Yeah, modern books don't mention a lot of things that really happened, believe me, kid. The trio immediately turned around when they heard a mature male voice speak up. Before them stood a tall, lean, well-built man, in seemingly his late 20s or early 30s, dressed in a white suit with a black shirt underneath, white pants and black shoes. He looked a lot like Hiryu, though he had a more mature look, with long red hair behind his back made into a loose ponytail, resembling the mane of a lion, with 2 long bangs on each side of his face, bright blue eyes, with a little bit of green in them, and a short accurate beard on his chin. He looked with a smile at Akemi and Hiryu, before eyeing up at Naruto, with Naruto almost feeling like a chill running along his spine. It was like he was staring at something really, really dangerous. He has faced the key from Shinobi and even his mother before, but this man. For the first time in his life, Naruto decided to watch his mouth. And then he spoke up. So, to what do I owe the pleasure, mister? The man deliberately trailed off, despite obviously knowing who Naruto was. Dad, this is Naruto. He is from the academy, only he is in the first year. Akemi introduced him. He helped me and I thought that I could invite him over, as gratitude. Is that so, Akemi-chan? I wonder, what have a person like you, Naruto, have done for my daughter? Or should I say, to my daughter? Older Uzumaki narrowed his eyes upon Naruto, who despite not showing it, was actually starting to think about ways to escape. Dad, Ake-chan was assaulted again. And just as Hiryu had said, older Uzumaki's attention immediately went towards his son first, with a look fright and concern being next directed towards his daughter. Naruto intervened and handled them before they did anything degenerative of nature. They were of Inuzuka clan again, though without dogs this time. Naruto could see how the man's features hardened up at the mention of the clan. Again with those Minji mutts. I'll have words with Sume about that, and if she doesn't restrain them. He suddenly stopped, blinking once before turning to Naruto. Oh, I am sorry about this. I hope I didn't offend you. You have quite the infamy in Konoha, Naruto, so I have assumed that you've done something with my little girl here. Again, my apologies. Don't worry, I get that far more than I would like, and I understand. Naruto sighed, while the older Uzumaki extended him his hand. We haven't been properly introduced, have we? He smiles to Naruto with sincerity. I am Shingen Uzumaki, but you can call me Shin. Naruto looked for a second at the now announced Shin and shook his hand. It's a pleasure, Shingen. I am Naruto. Naruto responded, though already knowing that Shingen knew of him, as they released hands of each other. No offense, but I'm still surprised that I haven't heard about you. I mean, you are an Uzumaki, and Kushina with Narumi are as well, but none taken, and I would actually be more surprised if you've heard of us from your mother. Shingen and his kids immediately saw how Naruto stiffened up at the mention of Kushina. I see that her name isn't liked by just me, Naruto immediately calmed down at hearing it. I am sorry, no need, kid. I know what you feel, believe me. Shingen simply smiled to him, confusing Naruto. Now, let's get inside. I'm sure Aika should be done with the dinner by now. Come, I won't take no for an answer. I really don't want to impose, and Naruto was feeling uncomfortable at being invited by someone over and was about to go, but he was stopped when Hiryu put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, giving him a small, comforting smile. It's all right, Naruto. You've helped my sister, and that's enough of a reason for me to call you friend. Naruto slightly widened his eyes, but calmed down. Now, let's not keep mom waiting. Hiryu and Akemi went on ahead, opening up the door inside, with Naruto and Shingen remaining for a second, before Shin gave a nudge in the back to Naruto, speaking up. If you are worried about Anbu or Konoha police coming your way for what you have done, you can calm down. I may not look like much, but not even current Hokage or his advisors have it in them to go against a decision that I've made. Shingen smiled to him, opening up the door and letting Naruto inside. Inside, Naruto saw what he had expected to see within the tailor shop. Mannequins with various garments of all kinds, rows of textile and various kinds of silk, material and more. It was a spacious place, with a waiting area, a stand for shopkeeper, books with numerous models of garments, utilities for measuring. The interior was made in a modern, yet slightly moderate style, creating an atmosphere of warmth and welcoming comfort. Overall, Naruto had to admit that it was a plain, simple, yet elegant in its own way tailor shop, though he was ready to be that there was more to it, especially with the earlier statement of Shingen. As the two have entered, Naruto did not wait to ask a question. You speak with some confidence, but why would the Uchihas and Anbu Black Ops fear a plain and simple tailor, if you don't mind me asking? Naruto turned to Shingen, who simply chuckled. They don't fear to press up any civilian that steps out of line, especially the Uchihas with their angered-up vigorousness. What would make them reconsider their policy with you? Maybe because I am a very good tailor, who also happens to have a little hobby on the side. Shingen suggested in a somewhat amused manner, with Naruto cocking up an eyebrow. A lot of shinobi may not have much in terms of love towards the civilian sector, but even they have to understand that said sector here is essential for the survival of Konoha, as it supplies the most basic needs to them. Provisions, medicines, all kinds of materials and services, you name it. And all of this is something that I take an interest in, the civilian economical sector. You are what, a head of the Commerce Union? Naruto asked, with Shingen shaking his head. No, not quite. Aside from being a professional tailor and former shinobi of Konoha, I am also one of main investors in Konoha, with my money being invested in practically every essential and non-essential economical part of this village, and beyond it as well. Naruto looked a little bit surprised. Akamichi may be good chefs, but are terrible farmers, so they have to be supplied with meat, wheat and everything in between. Same as with everyone else. Yamanaka, Inuzuka, Nara, Hyuga, etc. I believe you know how investment works as a business. It's the principle of the banking system. loaning money to someone and extracting a percentage of his profits in exchange. Shingen nodded to Naruto. If you are an investor and one that can dictate rules to Hokage, why bother with a simple tailor shop? Because this is something I rather enjoy doing, and I am quite good at it as well, with practically no competition in here, so I have a job security. Plus, who could possibly believe that the richest man in Konoha and one of the wealthiest persons in all of elemental nations is a simple professional tailor with a shinobi past? Shingen asked of Naruto, who simply shook his head. Not every investor makes himself known as one, and usually takes up an additional profession as well. I know one investor from the Land of Stone, who is also a very popular writer, with his detectives being quite the bestsellers. Although his romance series didn't go far from that perverted frog fetishist's voyeur escapades. You are not what I had expected, Naruto simply stated to Shingen, who led him through the waiting area, into the working area and from there to the ladder to living place's living place. I get that sometimes. Shingen stepped aside, letting Naruto inside of his house. Please, make yourself comfortable. The second floor looked like the example of a modern living house, with a living room on Naruto's left, with sofa, 3 armchairs, bookcase filled with books, some paintings and photos of family, tables and more. The entire room taking up about half of the spacious floor, with, what Naruto had guessed, kitchen being located on his right, and further ahead on the right were the bathroom and, maybe, a library or a personal cabinet behind the closed door. The entire floor looked warm and felt comforting, with warming beige and sunny colors, well illuminated by windows and lights. All was made to look and feel like a comfortable house, with a caring and nice people living in. As Shingen went ahead into kitchen, Naruto went into the living room, taking a seat on the comfy sofa, feeling not very comfortable, to be perfectly honest with himself. It was quite a long time since he was welcomed in by someone and allowed to in just like that. He may have protected Akemi from the Inuzuka idiots, but, in his mind, it wasn't something that should have allowed him to get in here, even out of gratitude. A simple, thanks, should have been enough for someone like him, but instead, he was allowed in. Was there some kind of plot in play here? Or was Hiryu with his family simply that kind to him? If this was true, then this would honestly be the first time for Naruto, encountering such kindness. Though sofa was comfortable, Naruto wasn't feeling too good sitting on it, so he rose up and began looking around the room, particularly at the photos. There were a lot of photos of Hiryu and Akemi with their parents, from practically all ages, starting up with infancy, followed by when they were little kids, kindergarten and going into the academy years. There were smiles, happiness on their faces and genuine content with life, with Hiryu laughing and smiling all the way, with Akemi's beautiful eyes displaying happiness with a small cute smile, or how she blushes up because of being embarrassed of her looks. Then there are happily grinning Shingen with his happy and caring wife Aika, a tall, beautiful woman with light blue eyes and long silver hair, possessing quite an appealing figure, rivaling that of Tsunade and even surpassing it in proportional beauty. It was no secret that many shinobi and civilians alike considered her to be one of the most beautiful women in Konoha, an object of envy and jealousy of fairer and a wet dream of many men. As Naruto went on looking through them all, he felt how his heart inside of him sank deeper and deeper. All of these images of happy family, caring parents and siblings. It made him feel hollow inside. This was something that he didn't expect to feel, not anytime soon or anywhere like this. A feeling that he has been pushing away inside of him and burying it down under rage and fury, as well as countless and restless training. Loneliness. Naruto felt lonely, abandoned and empty, with the feeling of sadness settling in. All of this that he was seeing. How much he wished that it could have been him and his parents there. To be able to experience all of this and more, to spend time like this without a care in the world. To hear his mother's laughter and father's chuckle at something funny, or feel the warm embrace of them and the intoxicating feeling of content and safety. To even run around and have fun with his siblings, laughing and playing at the streets or in the house. To be a part of happy family once more. All of this and more was all that Naruto had wanted to have, yet no longer can, nor had it in him. Happiness at the sight of his parents was replaced burning fury of a wronged son, tender and warm feelings for his siblings were now sharp and cold. They've made it clear to him in their actions that he was no longer someone they care about, with all their thoughts and attention diverted towards the twins. In their house, there were only 3 photos in which Naruto was depicted, and even those showed him on the sidelines and not smiling. The family album held 79 photos of twins, with and without their parents, while Naruto only had 14 dedicated to him, with 8 being the same as with those in the house. He had not known the feeling of happiness, when his parents looked at him with pride, but the bitter taste of disappointment and misery. At this moment Naruto could clearly feel a strong sense of envy and even jealousy towards Hirayu and Akemi, but even more vividly, he could feel sadness and sorrow, with a crack having formed in his cold exterior. A small crack on his armor that he had built around himself. One that showed itself in the form of a single lone tear falling down on his face, with Naruto not even noticing it. He was so transfixed upon the photos that he did not even notice a certain housewife stepping into the living room and noticing Naruto's look of sadness. Naruto? In 1 second, the armor regained its integrity, as he quickly turned to face the source of a sweet and caring voice of Ika Azuma, standing in front of him in a lightly blue sweater, black pants and plain slippers, with a white apron above her attire. I haven't seen you in quite a while. I hope you are doing well? As well as considered of me. Naruto answered in his usual manner, noticing a slightly perplexed and concerned look on Ika's face. I am sorry for being a bother. If you want, I can. Now why would I want you out, young man? Ika asked of him in a somewhat insulted tone. You have protected my sweet Akemi's honor and dignity from those assailants, from what Akemi and Hirayu told me. The least I can do for this is thank you accordingly. The meals are being served as we speak by Akemi. Please, wash your hands in the bathroom in the room after kitchen and join in. Sure, Naruto said hesitantly. I'll be in a bit. He began to move towards the bathroom when Ika called him out. Naruto. She drew his attention to herself. Is everything alright? It may not be my place to pry, but you look sorrowful and sad. Only now Naruto noticed a lone teardrop on his cheek, which he wiped out, before replying quickly. I'm fine, just not feeling too comfortable in here, but not because of you. It's just, words died down in his throat, before he decided simply not to answer on this one. I'll be joining you in a minute. And with that, he left for the bathroom, while Ika trailed him with a concerned and saddened look, understanding what was going on with her former patient. She could only guess and theorize, but a mother's heart told her that years and loneliness have not been kind to Naruto. Quite the opposite, as even without a dujutsu like Sharingan or Byakugan, Ika could clearly see a tormented soul, wrapped in a constant pain of loneliness, humiliation and abandonment. She and her husband may have been a little bit private, but that didn't mean that they were aloof to what was happening in Konoha. The events of 6th Kyuubi Festival Day were known to her well as the consequences of it, such as disinheritance of Naruto from Namikaze and Uzumaki clans, along with his reaction of his parents to it. To be so openly forgotten and abandoned by your own parents, and then ostracized and humiliated by the near entirety of the village because of what his parents decided. It was no wonder that Naruto was feeling so out of place in her house or confused and perplexed with this kindness and gratitude. When one goes long enough without something important, they start to learn how to live without it, and when it comes back to them, it feels so out of place for them, yet may also be something of yearn to them. Ika may have not known Naruto well, but she hoped that she and Shingen could help the poor boy. After Naruto returned from the bathroom, the table was set and he joined in, being seated next to Hirayu, with Akemi facing him. He was greeted warmly by Shingen and Ika, who placed the utensils and dishes on the table, with food following it. It wasn't anything of great extravagance, but a tasty-looking food, traditional to Konoha people. As he sat, he decided to eat without even saying a word, getting on it just as he was used to. Naruto had to admit that the food was not just good, but delicious, much better than what he was used to cooking up for himself. It made his mouth salivate and awakened a gluttonous hunger for it, as he had practically forgotten how tasty food can be. He was practically eating it without any care, until a careful cough by Shingen hadn't broken him out of his state and made him look at his surroundings. Akemi and Hirayu were looking at him with a perplexed gazes, while Ika was looking surprised and somewhat revolted even, while Shingen managed to maintain a more simple and normal look upon him, as he spoke up to Naruto. Kid, no need to go stuffing all the food in your mouth like that. We aren't going to take it away from you or anything. Shingen and the rest of his family saw how Naruto chewed on his food and gulped it down, before sitting straight, looking ashamed of his actions. I am sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect or try to be a brute, Naruto was starting to panic a little, before Akemi chuckled a little to him and spoke up. Naruto, it is alright, just try to eat slowly and taste the food properly, okay? It's just, you look kinda silly when you stuff your face. Akemi blushed up a little bit when she said it. I mean that if that's how you. I didn't mean to make fun of you, No, I understand, and I'm sorry. I'll be more proper with food. Naruto calmed down, as did Akemi, starting to eat his food slower and tasting it, with everyone else returning back to it, until the family began to talk. So Hirayu, are you and Akemi going to take the exam tomorrow? Did Haruka give you any trouble for getting a head start before the rest of your class? Aika asked of her son, while Naruto stiffened up, as he felt himself again out of place and even uncomfortably. I remember him mentioning that he doesn't like his students start out sooner than expected. Says that they should enjoy and appreciate this time of their life to the fullest, instead of cutting it short. To be quite honest, I somewhat agree with him. Maybe today that's how the things are, but back in our day. I remember more students graduating on their first and second years than actually going through full course. Shingen recalled, with Aika nodding to it a little. Although, those were uneasy years and every village needed able shinobi like heir, since war was brewing up. Granted though, the quality of training shinobi was on completely different level as well back then. Nothing like today's kindergarten with all this prattling about Hokage being all great, especially with Minato's so-called miracle. Naruto could clearly hear a tone of disagreement and even anger in Shingen's voice. Iruka-sensei did try to talk me and brother out of this, along with Rei and Keiji, saying that we are not ready for this yet. Akemi spoke up, with Shingen shaking his head at this one. Rei and Keiji didn't really listen to him, though, and left, with Keiji saying that he and his sister are tired of listening to the same thing over and over. To be quite honest, I kinda agree with him. Yeah, Iruka and Mizuki do tell the same thing over and over again to us on history, like there isn't something better to teach us. Hirayu agreed with them. Although Iruka-sensei is a pretty great teacher, but Mizuki-sensei, I quite honestly can't even stand the guy, something about him just. I don't know, sit well with me. Like he puts up this nice guy front, but behind it is some kind of villain from TV shows. I've seen more than enough of these kinds of people, and I can tell that Mizuki is definitely not very fit to be a teacher. A shame that there are practically no experienced jonins in the academy nowadays. Aika sighed, before noticing how Naruto was looking very stiff and uncomfortable. Naruto, is something the matter? Did you not like the food? Shaking off the stasis, Naruto looks up at Aika and speaks up. No, the food is great, really. It's the best stuff I've eaten in ages, actually. Don't think I've even eaten anything better before. Naruto truthfully said, with Aika smiling at the compliment, though she and Shingen were already thinking over his statement. I'm not used to this kind of a mealtime, with all this talking and discussions, or company for that matter. You don't have mealtimes with your parents? Akemi asked the innocent question, with Naruto simply shaking his head. But, how do you eat? Does your mom cook enough food and you eat it separately, and why do you not eat with them at all, if you don't mind me asking? At first, when I was little, I did eat with them, but after they had started training the twins to control Kyuubi and other stuff. Mealtimes gotten mostly dominated by Menma and Narumi rambling on and on about what they had learned or were going to learn, or how they spend their time with friends, especially in front of Jiraiya and Tsunade. Naruto spoke up with a bit cold voice, with Aika and Shingen exchanging glances with each other. They were the centers of the attention, while I simply sat and ate, with Kushina and Minato and others not really asking me about anything, and if they did, it would mostly be where I was and what I did. I would say I was mostly out in village, which is true, but when they would try to press further, either Menma would ask for a refill, or Narumi would recall something really cool she heard or saw and tell about it. It must have been really uncomfortable and awkward, sitting through it all, like you don't even exist to the others. Hirayu said with a tone of sympathy and sadness, with Naruto nodding to it. But it surely wasn't all that bad as it seemed, right? I mean, our mom and dad would never stand for me or Akemi interrupting one another like this or overshadowing each other. I don't really know about your parents, Hirayu, but with mine. Minato was always busy with work as Hokage, and would more often than not talk about it at table, while Kushina would be prattling about how Menma and Narumi are doing so great under her awesome teaching skills and all. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh, taking a moment to calm down. At some point, the ignorance was starting to become too much, and I've started to first skip meals, and later have them in different times or out of house. Even learned how to cook it up myself, though never really good, but it was something. Didn't they ever notice that you weren't at the table? They couldn't have just not noticed it at all, could they? Aika asked of Naruto, fearing the already expected answer from him. They did, at first, and asked why I've started skipping meals. I told them that I had stuff to take care, and they lay off of me, and after the day, everyone in the room understood what Naruto was referring to. They didn't really bother with it, with Kushina now cooking enough for 4 people, instead of 5. As you can imagine, I'm not exactly in the best relations with either the brats, or Hokage and his wife. Especially with his wife, thanks to. Naruto rubbed his slapped cheek, as if recalling the pain. Me not being good enough to be in her heir, like those two. The last bit was said with a great deal of bitterness and anger in it, which did not go unnoticed by anyone. Aika and Shingen exchanged glances, silently communicating between themselves about this entire ordeal. They had heard all about how Kushina had stated that Menma and Narumi were better than Naruto back at his birthday, since she didn't bother with lowering her voice at all. The very notion of one sibling's superiority over the other was absolutely repulsive for Aika, especially as a mother, who would not even think about judging her children based upon some ridiculous standards that Kushina had set for her children. She knew that Hiryu and Akemi weren't perfect in all and had their own weak and strong sides, and she loved and cherished them for it all equally. As for Shingen, hearing about being better and not good enough had a reminding effect. Just as he sat there and looked at Naruto, he couldn't help but see another red-headed boy with blue eyes from a different time, who was told he was not good enough for the honor of being Kyuubi's vessel. The anger, rage, envy, bitterness and so much that he felt back then. All of it had made him push himself past any and all limits that he may have had, accepting loneliness as his companion. And when he had thought that he was now better than before, that boy, now older, was once again passed over for his teammate for the honor of becoming a personal student of Jiraiya in Sage Arts, again, because he wasn't up to that man's standards. Shingen remembered it all well, and how much it had hurt him, driving him into rage, with only Aika having been able to save him from himself and ultimately learning the real values of life are not in being the best in others' eyes, but in being the better person for yourself and for those you care for. If only he had understood that when Mito Uzumaki had tried to explain it to him, if only Shingen wasn't so angry at everyone. If there ever was one thing that Shingen Uzumaki had learned in his life, then it would that unchecked and unbridled fury will only lead a person to loneliness and suffering. Now, Shin was looking at Naruto and seeing a very familiar image of himself in the boy. He was sure that Aika also saw it as well, and they both understood one thing. The boy needs help, and he needs it fast. Just as if Shingen and Aika had come to the same conclusion, everyone in the room heard a loud sound of thunder, right outside of the house. Drawing everyone's attention to the window, they saw that a large rainfall was now pouring over Konoha, with wind blowing and howling with such power, that it seemed like it could blow away building and trees. Shingen stood and went to close up the windows before it started pouring inside the house. Looks like this thunderstorm will be raging for the rest of the evening and entire night. Shingen noted out as he looked out a practically blackened Konoha, before turning to Naruto. Looks like you won't be getting home today, kiddo. Hiryu, could you show Naruto one of the guest rooms? And could you get some of clothes for him to change into? You two have about the same sizes. Sure thing, Dad. Hiryu agreed without hesitations, while Naruto wasn't as convinced. There is no need for that. I'll just head back home and… Naruto tried to speak up against such an idea, but wasn't allowed when Shingen spoke up again. Kid, look right out there and ask yourself. Do I feel lucky, going out into that thunderstorm? Shingen pointed with his thumb to a window behind him, where the rainfall was starting to pick up. I've lived in Uzu and I know a thunderstorm when I see one. The best thing you can do, kid, is stay here until it settles down for good. And from the looks of things, it'll probably be only over in the morning. The building itself is protected with seals of Uzumaki stamp of approval, so it won't make a dent on our house here, but if you take a step outside. Shinobi or not, there's some times when you best not test your luck with Mother Nature, and that's just the time. And if you think that we would simply allow you to go out into that hurricane like this, you are sorely mistaken, young man. Aika added to Shingen's argument before stepping closer with a warming smile. Naruto, it's alright. We have enough spare rooms to spare, and we aren't taking no for an answer. As a mother, a compassionate person, and most importantly, a doctor, I highly recommend that you stay here. Aika spoke with an absolutely serious tone of voice. Trust me, Hirayu. When mom gets like that, there is no stopping her, and you don't want to hear her start making demands. Hirayu spoke up to his friend, who sighed and spoke up. Alright, I just don't want to impose, plus, I'm also taking the exam tomorrow. Naruto informed them all, with Hirayu and Akemi exchanging glances with each other before smiling to him. Then that mean that we can take them together tomorrow? Akemi responded to that. I've no doubt that we'll all succeed. I would be more surprised if all three of you didn't pass tomorrow. Shingen chuckled at this one. Hirayu, why don't you show our guest the room and give him the cloths? Akemi, would you mind closing down the shop below? His kids nodded to him and went ahead with their tasks, with Naruto following Hirayu upstairs, while Akemi took the keys and went downstairs, leaving their parents alone in the kitchen, with Aika already picking up the dishes and preparing to wash them, as she spoke up in a concerned tone of voice. It's even worse than I had thought, she said in a saddened and pained tone, with Shingen turning his attention to his wife. Did you notice how tense and uncomfortable Naruto was? It's like he was expecting something bad to happen to him. And the way he ate and the fact that it's the first time in a long while since he ate homemade food like this, among family. Just what have Kushina and Minato done to the boy? Aika practically broke the dish when she said it like that. Yeah, you said, Aika. Shingen's voice became deeper and more somber as well. I saw the scarred skin on his knuckles and fingers, and all this talk about being not good enough, and his eyes. Shingen let out a sigh, as he looked at his own reflection in the window. Those were the same eyes I used to have back then. A boy, neglected in favor of one who has more promise, who answers some personal requirements and is simply thought to be a better of someone. I know it was far different for me than it is for him, but for Naruto it is even worse. Damn it, Minato, you are just like that frogged bastard. Shingen, Naruto can't continue down on that road. Aika turned to her husband with a serious look on her face. The more villagers and his family continue to antagonize him, the worse it will be for him. All of that anger and rage for what had happened to him, it will kill him eventually. But behind all that anger and rage there is still a good and kind-hearted person, one that simply yearns for acceptance, for friendship and family. When I walked in on him in the guest room, he was on the verge of crying when he looked at the pictures of us and kids. I know that it isn't our place, but I can't simply stand idle and let a good soul get crushed under all of this. Then that makes the two of us, Aika. Shingen agreed with her. Although, I have been hearing about the kid all the time and it doesn't seem like the civilian populace holds any resentment towards him. If anything, more than a few pities the boy, but there aren't many that are willing to help him out openly, since none of them want to get on the bad side with shinobi clans. And those have grown quite a lot more arrogant and self-assured in their absolute authority in here. Not to mention the brewing situation with Uchihas. And what about us then? Aika asked of her husband, who looked up to her with a smile. Are we going to be like the others, or is my husband, the Crimson Devil of Konoha, going to do things his own way, just as he has always done? Aika asked of Shingen, who simply smiled to her. You know how I hate it when you dare me, Aika. Shingen laughed a little bit. I only do so, because I know that you could never turn down dare. Aika smiled to him in answer. After all, wasn't this how I got you to finally say the L word? Touché. Shingen chuckled at the memory. It's not going to be easy for Naruto, and we'll have to be patient. Hirayu and Akemi will want to help no doubt, and as for Minato and Kushina, if they. Shingen and Aika weren't able to continue their conversation, as they heard their daughter stepping onto the floor and coming into the kitchen. Dad, I'm sorry, but there is Lord Hokage downstairs. He has come for Naruto, and it seemed to me like he wasn't taking him home. Akemi told her father and mother, with Shingen frowning at the fact that there was an uninvited guest downstairs. I had tried to tell him that he simply defended me, but he said that either we give him willingly, or he'll come up here and take him himself. Wow, he makes us sound like we've captured Naruto or something. Looks like my old friend had forgotten what manners are since he became a Hokage. Shingen went towards the stairs to greet his former teammate. I'll take care of this, Akemi. You go ahead and rest up. I'll be back in a minute or two." With this said, Shingen went downstairs. It took him less than a minute to get downstairs and enter the shop from behind his stand. Once he did that, Shingen could clearly see the current 4th Hokage, the legendary Yellow Flash of Konoha and the most famous student of Sannin Jiraiya, Minato Namikaze. The blonde Hokage met Shingen with a cold stare, which did not deter Shingen in the slightest, even amusing him to a certain extent. To him it simply meant that Minato hadn't forgotten of their past and still hasn't let go of it, unlike Shingen. It wasn't a particular secret that when 3rd Hokage was planning to retire, there were several pretenders for this post, with Minato and Orochimaru being the main ones, but there was also Shingen Uzumaki, Minato's former teammate and another one of Konoha's finest defenders. While late Danzo Shimura had supported Orochimaru, Minato was highly revered and supported by Shinobi Council and Shinobi population, and Shingen had the support of the civilian clans and the general population of the village, as well as the favor of Fire Daimyo on his side. Unfortunately for Shingen and Orochimaru, Shinobi Council pressured on 3rd Hokage to have Minato succeed him, wanting to get more influence over things in Konoha, and knowing that between sadistic and manipulating Orochimaru, seasoned and mature Shingen Uzumaki, and young and idealistic Minato, it would be the easiest to take control over the latter. And so Minato was elected as the 4th Hokage, while Shingen had left the Shinobi Corps behind, becoming something of an unofficial leader and defender of civilian populace's rights in Konoha's politics. It was a well-known fact that many of the shinobi didn't like or outright despised Shingen Uzumaki, calling him a traitor to shinobi. Minato himself have admitted that he was not expecting Shingen to become his opponent and opposition to him in Konoha like that, stating that he had hoped that they could have worked for the betterment of Konoha. Shingen simply stated that he was loyal not simply to Konoha, as all the other shinobi, but to all the people that lived in it, as was befitting to an Uzumaki of Uzu, to be a loyal defender of all those that resided in his village. The two were vastly different in their ideals and viewing of the world, as well as their core values, yet both could have been called the most loyal men to Konoha's people. But where Minato had viewed Konoha as completely shinobi-oriented village and civilian population as simple addition to it, Shingen saw the importance of both shinobi and civilians, seeing Konoha as a home for them all and not just shinobi. In his eyes, it was now bigger and more than what first Hokage had envisioned for the hidden village, along with the will of fire, something that he disagreed with completely. Perhaps it was an Uzumaki blood in Shingen with the will of unity, the core concept for all Uzumaki and their code of living. While similar in their concepts, with Uzumaki's will of unity predating the will of fire, there were fundamental differences between them as well. The same differences that have made Minato and Shingen, once teammates and comrades, into rivals in their views and codes of conduct. Shingen looked at Minato, noticing that he wasn't even wet from the storm going on outside, meaning that he used his favorite Hiraishin to get here. Shingen knew he should have removed that marker years ago. You know, it's usually considered impolite to enter into someone's house without the usage of the front door. Shingen decided to jape a little, as he closed the distance between him and Minato. Plus walking is always good for your feet, providing exercising and ridding off all the excess mass. Although looking at you, you could use a little on you, but with Kushina's cooking skills. Shingen, cut the chatter. Minato sharply said to him, with Shingen shutting up. You and I both do not exactly enjoy each other's company, so let's keep it brief. Where is Naruto? Minato asked the question. Why, he is upstairs, probably getting ready for a sleep in the guest room. It's not like the weather there is good for strolls. Shingen replied like it was something completely normal, getting a surprised reaction from Minato. You didn't think that Aika and I would throw him out into that storm, now did you? It's not needed of you, to give him a room and bed. I'm taking him with me. Minato was about to go towards the stairs, but was stopped by Shingen, who wasn't looking like he would allow Minato to pass. Shingen, let me pass and we will be off. How about you be off to either home or work, and let the boy rest after a good family meal? Something he definitely needed in a long time. Shingen suggested to Minato, who glared at his former friend. You know, if you had more of those normal meals with him, like a normal family, there wouldn't be such a great need to send him to the Anbu cell for a week, like you were about to do, aren't you? Sume had reported that he had assaulted 4 of her clansmen and crippled 2 of them. I will not let this simply slide like nothing had happened, son or no son of mine, so don't try to stand in my way, or I'll charge you with cooperating with a criminal. Minato threatened, with an irate voice and tone, something that Shingen did not take lightly. I would be careful, threatening me like that in my own house, Minato. And as for those 4 Inuzuka degenerates, has Sume or those bastard forget to mention that they have assaulted my daughter and even tried to have, what she called it. Oh yes. Preliminary exams, for taking Genin exam tomorrow. Shingen released a little bit of his ki at Minato, making the blonde flinch at it. You know, I'm usually a pretty chill person these days, but if there's one thing I can't stand, then it's when someone assaults my family and thinks they can get away with it with their skin intact. Good thing they didn't though, thanks to Naruto. If you think that I'll believe that 4 Genins have assaulted. Minato wasn't allowed to speak more, as Shingen interrupted. If you were half the Hokage everyone here thinks you are, you would have long known that first. It's not your son that goes on picking all the fights, but every shinobi clan who is arrogant enough to do that, thanks to you. And second, in case you haven't heard or noticed, the civilian population has been getting harassed by shinobi from practically all ranks more and more frequently over all kinds of things, and the nature of this harassment is getting worse. Shingen said with steel-cold resolve. So, instead of serving as an ass wiper for Sume and training those golden-ass twins of yours, you go back in your office and address these damn issues, before I decide to take action into my own hands. Minato knew full well that with the tone like that, Shingen was not kidding. You do not have the right for that. You are not the Hokage. Minato reminded him. And as for the rumors, I have been assured by my advisors that those were just baseless rumors. I wouldn't call seeing my friends mugged by shinobi, charging them with so-called protection fee. Or how about the fact that clans are demanding higher prices on all of their products, while not even paying up the full price for the delivered items and products from civilians? Shingen addressed just some of the most prominent problems. And how about the fact that since you and your wise council have basically exiled Uchiha clan on the outskirts of village, they've been taking out their anger and frustration on the civilians of Konoha, with their raids on merchants, baseless arrests and even beatings and tortures for confessions in the most meager of crimes. And don't deny that you didn't know about it, Minato. We both know that you know. That still doesn't make you a Hokage, Shingen. Minato reminded him again. No, it doesn't, but it seems like I'll have to do the Hokage's job for you. And you know that I am not one to mince words or be bent over every time the Shinobi Council wants to have their own way. Shingen stated with strength, one that Yellow Flash had remembered was in the Crimson Devil. So unless you want me to disrupt the natural order of things around, you'll leave Naruto alone and instead, start doing the job you were put in charge of doing. And, while you are at it, maybe take a few minutes to address the constant harassment of your son. That is, if you even care about him. Shingen showed with his posture that he was done talking and already headed back. Close the door from outside, if you don't mind. I've heard that Hiryu and Akemi will be taking their exam tomorrow, alongside with Naruto and Uchiha orphans. Minato seemingly said out of nowhere, making Shingen stop in his tracks. We are a little short on the capable Jonins right now, but I think we'll be able to spare our best one for them, along with someone from the special Jonins. Seems it looks like we'll be having a 5-man squad formed from them. Just though that you wanted to know. With that, Minato teleported out of the shop, with Shingen scowling at this one. If he meant the one I'm thinking about, then it's probably a good thing I was already planning on offering Naruto, Rei and Keiji to train them. Shingen said to himself, already setting up a training plan for the future Genin squad. Naruto opened up his eyes, with some grogginess in his muscles and all over his body, as if it wasn't really ready or willing to leave the warm and nice bed. Wasn't the first time that he had this feeling, but it was a really long time since he had experienced it, as he was very much used to waking up just before the sunrise. Having lived with his family, as much as he had loathed that word nowadays, he had learned that none of them could stomach to get up before at least 6:30, and so Naruto took to liking waking up before that, at 5 a.m. at latest. It had quite a few advantages for him. Longer day, more time to get things done, enough time to eat, clean up and not get spotted by his family. Wasn't all that easy to adjust at first to this, but it did get normal for Naruto after a week and a half. Plus, apparently his organism didn't need all that much time for rest, being probably in the same category as his increased endurance and strength. Not that he had ever complained for that, if anything, it had served him a good service throughout the time and continued to do so. However, this time was different, as Naruto had slept in different house, in guest room, which looked a lot like a comfortable, not too big personal room of a person should look like. Desk, wardrobe, bookshelf, enough space for moving in a bathroom, quite like his own room in the residence, but this one felt differently. It felt warm, comforting and comfortable in here, while his own felt empty and hollow, and was only used to rest. Here Naruto felt like he could relax and let his guard and posture drop. Maybe it was because of all the positivity with the Uzumaki here. He has heard that caring and loving family makes any home welcoming, but he did not really believe it to be true. Apparently, he might have to reconsider his opinion on that. Dressing and cleaning himself up, Naruto looked at the clock, stating that at 25 minutes before 5 a.m. Which wasn't something surprising for him. Carefully, trying not to make any noise and wake anyone up, Naruto made it downstairs and saw the door, leading into the backyard. From the window and from the sounds, Naruto saw that the storm had passed and it was a clear pre-dawn sky, already starting to light up. Stepping outside, young Redhead was a bit surprised to see that the entire yard was dry and clean, as if it wasn't affected by the rainfall. Dismissing it as a possible barrier ninjutsu, Naruto walked through the yard, seeing several practice dummies and training equipment here. Seeing that this was the place where the family trained and honed up their skills, Naruto decided that the best way to kill time would be to get some practice while he had the opportunity. Taking his stance at the training man-like wooden dummy, made to both practice strikes and blocks, Naruto went on ahead at it, going into semi-trance, as his hands and arms went on ahead at it at an instinct level. Naruto worked fast, not letting himself get caught up in any thoughts, letting his limbs move freely with his own style. Over the years in fighting, Naruto had developed 3 styles, to be exact, each centered around a certain idea or direction of a battle. With Aikido and Wing Chun, Naruto was able to create a universal quick defensive style, centered on quick counters and blocks. Hapkido and Wing Chun were similar to the first, but were a more universal style for either good offense or defense, meaning to grab on opponent and disable him in rapid motion. And with Krav Maga and Aikido, it was a style meant to cripple, incapacitate and kill his enemies quickly. This allowed for Naruto to have a good degree of versatility and effective means for every situation. After what Naruto considered about half an hour of training, his right arm blocked the coming left limb of Mannequin, before finishing him off with his quick and powerful punch to the chest, knocking the dummy into the ground. Out of his stance and trance, Naruto could see that he had done quite a bit on the thing, as there were now numerous pumps on it and even broken pieces near it. He must have been pushing more and more strength into his strikes and counters without even knowing it, like he usually did. He would have to apologize to Shingen and Aika for this and find out if he could. That dummy is made of special kind of oak, found in Land of Iron, and is famous for its sturdiness. Naruto turned his head to see Shingen, stepping out of the house, dressed in plain sleeveless jacket, baggy black pants and boots, and holding in his arms what appeared to be 2 big swords. I usually use it myself to get some workout for my punches, but you appear to have finally pushed it beyond set limits of durability. I apologize. I will. Naruto was starting to panic a little bit, before he heard Shingen chuckling. Wait, you are not mad at me for this? Or that I've apparently woke you up? Not at all. The old thing was already at its final days and I was thinking about replacing it, so it's okay. And no, you didn't really wake me up. Shingen simply stated to him, stepping closer to Naruto, looking carefully at him. Well, I'll have to say that I didn't think I would see another Uzumaki with my kind of bloodline. Naruto cocked his eyebrow up at this one, with Shingen promptly continuing on. You already know that we Uzumaki have a much stronger body and organism than that of a usual shinobi, giving us larger reserves of chakra and longer lifespan. It is a common thing among Uzumaki, but among us, there are those with special variations of this bloodline. One such variant are the chakra chains, like with Kushina. The other is an extremely potent sensor ability, which, when trained, can allow a person to literally sense and predict any enemy's movement, like with Byakugan, only even better. And then there are people like you and me, Naruto. What do you mean by that, Shingen? Naruto asked of him. I just know that every time I get beaten up, or really tired and weakened, I simply get stronger and better once I heal up. Isn't that the same with all Uzumaki? To a limited extent, yes, but not with you and me. Shingen put both swords down before speaking up again. Our variant of bloodline is called combat adaptability. When put under stress, with wounds and with adrenaline rushing through our veins, the body begins to subtly reconstruct and improve to decrease the stress and pain, such as improving strength of muscles, bones, tissue, or decreasing the amount of toxins in your body, as well as improving immune system and developing antibodies for poisons, all in rapid orders. It is like forced evolution at great speed, making us stronger, faster, and with much higher endurance. In other words, the longer and harder you train and fight, the tougher and more powerful you'll get, literally. Your body will only accommodate your increased exercises, as well adapt to new challenges, like poisons. Pretty neat, wouldn't you say? Shin smiled to him, with Naruto nodding to it. So, it's like a mutation of sorts in Uzumaki bloodline? Like with Mangekyo Sharingan of Uchiha? No, it isn't. It is, more correctly to say, one of the bloodlines of Uzumaki, brought in by one of the clans that have merged into Uzumaki over the centuries. This particular one was around since its foundation. Shingen explained to Naruto. Since it's obvious that Kushina didn't tell you shit about your ancestors, you should know that overall clan Uzumaki was not a simple clan per se. It was more like a union of several clans, joined together and forming a single entity, with the identities of clans merged in together and mixed in. One of those clans was Senju, at least the part of it that split away from the main body. By the time they reached Uzu, there were two other clans on the island, clans Azai and Shimazu, both with their own respective bloodlines. About 5 centuries ago, those three became the foundation of what clan Uzumaki is now, or was, until its near-complete genocide. Naruto was stunned to hear about this, as it was something completely new to him. There were books about history of the various clans in the residence's library, but there was only very sparse information about Uzumaki clan. Most of it was already well-known facts, but this was the most details and information in general that he had gotten. Hell, even Kushina told nothing about it to either him, which isn't all surprising to Naruto, or the twins, only going over what is general information for everyone. But to hear that clan Uzumaki was actually a union of clans, or a conglomeration of them. This is something unheard of, as the clans typically prefer to stick to themselves and their own ways, not adopt and mix in the others, as it would ruin their identity and pride. But the Uzumaki did just that, and it looked like it only worked in their favor. Well, enough about that. Shingen broke Naruto's thought train, as picked up one of the swords, the shorter and smaller one, yet still a significantly large one. Sorry, I haven't been completely honest with you yesterday. I have been keeping an eye out for you for quite some time now, Naruto, observing you and figuring you out. The fact that Naruto had found out that he was an object of someone's observation didn't please him one bit, making him irritated. What for? What would a man like you gain from observing someone like me, a clan failure? Naruto asked of Shingen with full seriousness. Wouldn't you be more interested in, I don't know, the heroic twins that hold Kyuubi at bay? Naruto asked in sarcastic and irate manner, with Shingen not faltering one bit at this response. I believe you've already deduced that I am not like most people in this village, Naruto. And I have no interest in two pampered, self-assured, irritating brats. Shingen simply stated to Naruto, as he tossed to Naruto the two-handed sword, which he caught. I am more interested in those that have determination, will and guts to become something much better than they are now. And you fit that category. Now, look at this sword and tell me what do you think about it. Naruto did as Shingen said, taking a careful and good look at the weapon in his arms and studying it carefully. This was a large long sword, with at 5 to 6 centimeters width and just a bit shorter than Naruto's own height, which was around 159 centimeters. With the blade being about 110 centimeters. And handle around 30 centimeters, allowing it to be held by 2 hands. It was double-edged and straight, completely unorthodox from usual katanas and ninja too, along with probably weight close to 3 kilos. Another interesting thing about it was the guard, made not in the form of a small shield, but as a rhomb, with 2 forward-slopped prongs and a pointy rainguard at the base of the blade. It was the most unusual, yet strangely, impressive weapon that Naruto had saw and held. Taking it with 2 hands, he stepped away a little bit and made several swings with it, finding out that it had rather large swings, but it was actually not as hard to wield and hold as one would think. While Naruto may have been knowledgeable about theory of kenjutsu, he had zero practice whatsoever, and it was obvious that the usual techniques and teachings of it wouldn't work on this piece of good work. No, this sword seemed to be centered around not elegant and swift strikes, but around powerful and wide strikes, compensating lack of speed with power behind swing. It was something that Naruto had found quite to his liking. Actually, as with his built-up strength and endurance, he didn't feel like katana was for him. But this could be something he could get behind. Having finished his analysis, Naruto spoke up to Shingen. The sword is a straight double-edged with long and wide blade. The two-handed grip and its general construction indicates that it's probably used for powerful strikes and wide swings, along with keeping opponents on a distance. Its size may sacrifice maneuverability, instead gives greater range, strength and possibly better defense, if mastered. Naruto said to Shingen, who picked up his own sword with one hand. I've never seen any sword like it. Doesn't look like it was made in any of the elemental nations, or in the land of iron. Because it wasn't made in any of Big Five. Shingen said, as he took the stance, and in what seemed like a split second, performed a series of powerful and wide swings with his sword, easily moving his weapon, impressing Naruto before he continued. This sword is called Claymore, and it is a sword created and utilized throughout the ages by Clan Uzumaki, made specifically for powerful and destructive blows, meant to break and pierce any and all armors. Because our clan was often a target of attacks from mainland, our smiths and crafters had developed weapons that would accommodate our more straightforward shinobi, with Claymore being one of them. Not a weapon for subtlety and stealth, true, but a fully trained Uzumaki shinobi with Claymore, or as we called them, a vanguard, can quite literally cut through 2 or 3 enemies with ease. I'm personally capable of slashing 4 or 5 heads in one go with this thing. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Yeah, very much so. Naruto admitted, as he looked closer at it, before asking the obvious question. Why did you show this to me? I doubt this is just because you wanted to give me a history lesson. Actually, I did want to give you. Shingen chuckled to him. And the other reason is because I believe it will suit you, as a primary weapon, and because I would like to train you in it, as well as Uzumaki clan's styles of combat and techniques. Naruto instantly widened his eyes at what he had just heard. I will be plain and honest with you, Naruto. There is a great deal of potential, a potential for being probably one of the strongest shinobi in the world. But along with that, there is a great deal of fury, resentment, anger and even malice in you, all of which that can destroy you as a human being. If you've been observing my life, you should already know by now why I've got all of this. Naruto did not object to possessing it, as he himself understood that he had them. But why do you really want to train me so badly? For the matter of that, what makes me so special in your eyes that you let me stay in your house for dinner in the night, and now offering to train me? Are you trying to hit up to Minato or something, or is it to reconcile with Kushina as clansmen? For your information, those two people I consider to be both failures as shinobi and as parents, and I hold little love for them, even if Minato and I were teammates and Kushina and I are from the same clan. Shingen said with clear signs of seriousness and even anger at them. If you want to know so badly, I will tell you, Naruto. It's because I know how you feel, and I know what it will do to you. I will not go into much detail, kid, but let me tell you. All this resentment, malice, hatred. It can empower you, make you stronger, faster, better, but in return, it will destroy your soul, leave you a hollow shell with nothing inside. If you continue bottle it in you and use it without care, one day you will find out that all people you cared about, your loved ones and friends, all of them are gone, either dead or have abandoned you. And at that moment, you'll realize that all your efforts to get better and outdo someone, or to prove that you better than people thought you were, will be worth absolutely nothing to you. Shingen said seriously to Naruto, with the conviction and soul in the harsh words, with Naruto guessing that Shingen had went through the same. I've been there, and I know that the end of this road is not for you. Now, I know I can't exactly tell you to simply get over what happened to you. Glad to know that somebody understands that. Naruto let out an amused chuckle, though he was being serious, recalling all the times that Minato and others have told him to get over his parents' decisions and grow up. But what I can do, however, is to teach you how to channel that wrath of yours into the right direction, without making you lose your humanity and control over your mind. And this sword, Shingen pointed at Claymore in Naruto's hand, Requires both a powerful resolve to swing it, and a clear and open mind to see where to swing it. So, what do you say, Naruto? Naruto took a moment to think about it, as he was finding himself conflicted. On one hand, he finally had the chance to start learning under a real shinobi, and an extremely powerful one possibly, with expertise in his arts. But on the other hand, it meant that he would have to do something he hasn't done in a long time, to fully put his trust in someone. After everything that has happened to him and how people have been treating him, Naruto found it pretty hard in him to put his full trust into someone or something. The last time he had put his trust into someone after his parents had all but exiled him from his family, he was taught a cruel lesson. Some people like to take advantage of others, especially in their vulnerable state, via offering them something they crave most, and Naruto was no different. The result had all but cemented his distrust for the general shinobi population of Konoha, an unyielding rage and grudge towards a specific person, and was also the reason why he spent 3 weeks in Anbu jail cell. And now, Shingen Uzumaki was essentially asking Naruto of the same thing, the thing that Naruto had nearly swore to never give to anyone. But, putting his analytical mind to work, Naruto worked through all of his words and speech, tone and way he spoke. And as a result of it, Naruto took up his claymore and lifted it up, looking at the blade, with the sunrays starting to appear from the east and glittering on it, before he looked at Shingen, and gave him a firm nod. Shingen Uzumaki smiled to him and lifted up his sword and spoke up. Alright, we'll start up right now. First up, you need to learn the stances and how to hold this blade. Watch closely, and repeat when I say you can do that, got it? Naruto nodded to Shingen, as he went on to take a stance, beginning their lesson. 3 hours later, their training lasted for near 2.5 hours, with Shingen not wasting a breath on idle chat or a joke, spending every moment to either show Naruto something important, correct his form, improve his stance or to judge how the boy acted and moved. And the veteran Uzumaki had to admit that while Naruto had a couple of chinks in his style and movements, most probably the result of his self-training, he certainly had the aptitude and attitude for claymore, as well as the build for using it. While he didn't have any swordsmanship training prior to this day, he was able to pick up on movements that Shingen shown him repeat and adjust them to his physique. He hadn't taught Naruto any fancy moves, powerful sword techniques, but he did manage to teach him the basics and foundations of Claymore's specific fighting style. Now Naruto knew how to utilize it and effectively fight with it, at least to the extent that he would be able to defend himself with it. Still, the progress was already impressive and Shingen was already making plans on the correct ways of training for Naruto, with his new style of kenjutsu, as well as beyond it, as the boy had a lot that he needed to learn. Especially, if Minato was going to go through with his veiled threat to Shingen. After they were done with the training and showering, Shingen and Naruto joined in breakfast, with Aika with siblings not at all surprised that Shingen and Naruto were already training. The breakfast was going on pretty much as did the dinner, only this time Naruto felt himself a little more at ease and ate normally. When they were done with it, Hiryu and Akemi went to their rooms to gather up their things for the exam, while Shingen attended the shop, as it was time to open it up. Naruto remained behind, deciding to help out Aika with her dishes, as it was the least that he could do for her. Once they were done, and he was ready to head out, Aika called him out. Naruto, could you spare a few minutes, please? Naruto nodded to her and went back. I have noticed that your garments do not really seem to fit your body's size. Aren't you feeling a bit tight in them, uncomfortable? Aika asked of Naruto, who looked at his clothes and moved a little bit, taking a notice that he did feel that way. Now that you mention it. I purchased these, along with most of my garments quite a while ago, over a year, when it was a good deal bigger on me, but now it seems I've grown out of them. Naruto sighed. Truth be told, I've mended them a couple times in the past few months after trainings, but I didn't really have any sewing machine around me, and I don't really like to go to commercial district. Aika nodded to him at that. So Kushina didn't buy you this, or any of your clothing? Aika asked for confirmation, with Naruto nodding. The last thing she bought me was a book titled, How to Be a Proper Older Brother to Your More Successful Siblings. By the tone of Naruto, Aika understood that he did not joke. I believe you can understand that I didn't exactly read it. Yes, I can, and that just confirms my suspicions. Naruto, could you go downstairs and wait for me at the changing room? I will be in a minute. Aika suddenly said to him, as she went upstairs for something, with Naruto simply shrugging at this and going downstairs, waiting for the white-haired woman, before she returned with various garments and military-like shoes. Now, I think would be just the right sizes for you. I may not have Shin's eye, but I'm not hopeless at all with garments either. Please, try them on, I insist. Naruto took a look at the offered garments and then took a look at kind-hearted woman that was handing them to him. He sighed, before grabbing them and heading into the changing room. A couple of minutes later, he emerged from there, with the whole family as an audience. Instead of plain black garments, Naruto now sported a black short coat with pockets and hood, the shoulders and upper arms being colored red and 2 red stripes on each of his sleeves, with a black t-shirt underneath, as it looked out from unzipped upper part. He wore black comfortable pants and the military shoes. Overall, he felt like it was good improvement over his previous garment, as well warmer and more comfortable ones. Plus, he also felt that they were somehow purposefully designed heavier than the normal ones and had bit of a military feel to it, while also a good style as well, not that he cared for it. Akemi blushed a little bit at the sight in front of her, while Hiryu and Aika smiled to him over this new look, with Shingen speaking up. Ah, so Aika has decided to give you one of my personal works. Not a bad choice, quite a good one actually. Shingen said with a professional tone, with Naruto looking up with a puzzled look. As a shinobi myself, I've had to deal with rather lacking equipment, so I've decided to design for Hiryu and Akemi something that could them work better, and this is one of my such works. The coat is 2-layered, with cold and water-resistant materials, with a protective chainmail, made out of a special synthetic material, sewn in between the 2 layers, protecting your body. Tails and your chest area are protected by plated variant of that armor. Pants are about the same way, with the synth protection centered around your knees, upper thighs and close to feet in form of plates, so be worn. Boots are the usual shinobi special type, closed up and not too tight around your ankles and feet, so circulation of blood goes on there. Overall, should do you well in, as it's both quite durable against shuriken, kunai and senbon and some of the large blades, but is also good for maneuvering around. Most of the jonin I know of would want it themselves, but they are all oh so proud of those damn green jackets. So make the most of it, kiddo. It sounds great, but are you sure that I should? Naruto was about to retort, but Shingen stopped him. You keep it, I've got more of this model, and it's a gift for accepting my proposition. Shingen then handed to him the claymore with which Naruto had trained up held by a twin hook below the crossguard, which was attached to a belt, with Naruto accepting it. If my instincts are right, you'll be having your first real shinobi test today, and you could use a bit of combat practice with it. Right, thank you. Naruto accepted it with a smile, putting the belt over his head and resting the sword on his back. We should probably be on our way now. Thank you for everything. Naruto bowed to the parents of Hiryu and Akemi, before heading out with them. Once outside, Naruto took a closer look at his companions and saw that they were also dressed up differently, with Hiryu sporting an fully opened variant of his coat without a hood, only platinum gray and light blue in color scheme, with a black belt holding a black straight long ninjutsu, with black pants and boots. Akemi went for a dark red sleeveless jacket with several pockets, black pants and sandals, coupled with a black mesh shirt underneath it all and black gauntlets on her wrists, with a medic specialized black bag on her hip and a wakizashi behind her. All seemed to point towards them being ready for real mission. The first one to break silence was Hiryu, as he took a look at Naruto's new armament. I hope that this claymore isn't too hard for you, Naruto. It can be a bit of hassle to get used to, from what I understand. Hiryu told him, with Naruto turning his attention to Hiryu. Dad always told me that it takes a special kind of finesse to utilize it. Sadly, he didn't say I could effectively use it, so he taught me a more traditional style of kenjutsu. Don't know about any finesse, but this sword does feel right in my hands. Maybe it's because I'm more of forward, overpowering type of fighter, so it could be that. Naruto said as he reached to his back and gripped the handle, lifting the blade up slightly before returning it back in hold. Yeah, definitely my type of weapon. Just need a couple of weeks, and I think I'll be able to pierce and cut with it at a good speed. And how are you two with your weapons, and how do you prefer to fight, out of curiosity? Well, you could say I am something of your antithesis in fighting style, Naruto. I've noticed that you've got a lot of stamina, strength and endurance, so you go with full-on assault with brute strength and power, or hold up in sturdy defense, right? Naruto nodded to this one. I focus more on striking swift and precise, finding blind or vulnerable spots to utilize. My best defense is simply evasion and getting out of the attack's range, not a direct block or something of that sort. I can take a couple of hits, true, but in long-term fight, I'm afraid I don't fare well at all, as Dad had told me. I see. And what about you, Akemi? I don't really enjoy fighting all that much, so I'm more on the defenses, with Mom teaching me Aikido and using wakizashi, but I'm not all that particularly good with them. Akemi said with a shamed voice. I've always had something of an interest in medicine, so I know a couple things about it, and teachers often said I had a good chakra control, so. Akemi isn't much as a frontline fighter like you and me, Naruto, but she makes up for it by being an expert in medical arts, poisons, antidotes, anatomy and Iryo ninjutsu, along with genjutsu. Hiryu took the initiative, seeing his sister struggling with a self-explanation, and making her blush. Akemi would be an invaluable member for any team or squad, especially because of her Iryo ninjutsu and medical knowledge learned from Mom. From what I understand, there aren't many shinobi these days that dedicate themselves to medical studies and Iryo ninjutsu, not like they used to, so quite a lot get hurt pretty badly during missions and some even. Well, die, so it's practically a blessing to have a medic on and at your side. That's nothing new, but you are right. You've got a really useful and important skill set, Akemi, so don't sell yourself too short. Better we have more medics than grunts like me. Naruto made a small smile to her, with Akemi blushing in response. By the way, you mentioned a couple of Uchiha orphans that'll be taking the exam with us. Anything I should know of them? Well, they are twins, with Rei being the older one and Keiji the younger one, but they aren't exactly full-blooded Uchihas like most of their clan. Hiryu told Naruto. Their mother was apparently one of the Uzumaki clan and a friend of our parents, but she got killed not long after the Kyuubi attack. And as for their father, have you heard about the Hyuga incident, about 2 years ago? When an ambassador from Kumo had tried to kidnap the heiress of Hyuga clan. Yeah, I've been involved in it, somewhat, myself. Naruto said vaguely, recalling how he had managed to stop the kidnapper in his tracks and stall him long enough for Hyuga clansmen arrive and finish the work. Not really all that important, but what does this have to do with their father? Well, according to the investigation that was conducted after the incident, their father was found to be guilty of cooperating with that Kumo shinobi, having provided him the means of infiltrating the Hyuga mansion. Hiryu told Naruto, who understood how it all was connected. Rumor has it that he pleaded not guilty and that it was set up, but when it didn't work, he had tried to escape, only to be cut down by Lord Hokage himself. Some say that Rei and Keiji were there when it all had happened and saw it firsthand, and cause of that, they don't like Hokage, not one bit, and aren't really liked by the rest of the village, but even worse are their Uchiha clansmen. What about them? Aren't they all conservative and collective, keeping only to themselves? What would those two have done to them? Naruto asked. That's the thing. They are despised and even hated by Uchihas because of their mixed origins. According to Dad, Uchihas are just as hell-bent on keeping the bloodline of their Sharingan pure, as are the Hyugas with their Byakugan. So, it wasn't a much-liked union between Uzumaki and Uchiha, plus add in the fact of their father's supposed betrayal, and Hiryu trailed off, with Naruto understanding what he meant. Looks like I'm not the only one being shafted by people of this village. Naruto bluntly stated. I'll keep that in mind, and it doesn't sound like you believe in that guy's guilt. To be honest, from what I understand and have noticed, Clan Uchihas aren't very much liked in this village nowadays, and ever since the Kyuubi attack, they've been losing their position in here, even before that, actually. Hiryu told Naruto. First they had lost their seat on the council soon after 4th Hokage took the office, then they were literally exiled into outskirts of village, and now they've lost one of their senior members like that. Dad says that the Uchihas didn't really approve of Minato Namikaze taking the office and opposed it, but were overruled the rest of shinobi clans, and are now being driven into the corner. Situation worsens for almost every day now, and nowadays, you can't have a day without hearing at least of one incident with Uchihas involved. I don't want to jinx it, but if this continues on like that, then there might be big trouble for the village. But it doesn't make any sense. Why would other clans and Hokage try to frame and do all this to their own comrades? This isn't how people should act, and especially Konoha shinobi. Akemi spoke up in a judging tone, not agreeing with actions of other clans. The Will of Fire clearly states that all people are a part of one big village, where they all support and love each other. And it also speaks about sacrificing themselves for its safety. Naruto also recalled, having heard more than enough times about this Will of Fire. Only these clans and Hokage don't really want to throw their own lives on the line, and would rather have it be done by someone outside of clan, or by someone they all don't really care or like. Clan Uchiha are the latter for M, since they are seen as unwanted elements now, despite how powerful the Sharingan is. Plus, they are the one of two founding clans of this village, with a great deal of fame and influence, bigger than most of the clans in here, and this isn't something they like. Naturally, they would want them out of picture. The Will of Fire is a pretty exclusive concept in minds of clans and Hokage, with them being able to use it as they please. No wonder that Dad has always scoffed at it, saying that it was a cheap rip-off of a Will of Unity of Uzumaki. Hiryu stated, as they began closing in on the academy, noticing that the Kushina and her twins were in front of the doors, having seen Naruto and his companions. Naruto stiffened immediately when he saw Kushina and her brats in front of the academy, a notion that did not escape the eyes of Hiryu and Akemi, with the latter being worried that something might happen. Kushina looked with a judging look at Naruto's new look, as well as a suddenly new addition to his armament in form of claymore, Uzumaki's traditional weapon of vanguards. She had heard from Minato that Naruto yet again had gotten himself into trouble, now with Inuzuka clan, and was ready to deal with humiliation of having her eldest spend time in Anbu jail, but somehow, Shingen Uzumaki had intervened and stopped Minato. Kushina had easily recognized Shingen's and Ika's children, Hiryu and Akemi, and had to hold herself from scoffing at them. She and Shingen didn't have friendly relations, especially after he started opposing Minato in his ways of running the village. Even before that, he had always tried to show her up in every way, as to prove himself of being better than her, a notion she thought was idiotic, as she was obviously his superior, having been chosen by Mito Uzumaki to be the vessel of Kyuubi, out of all other Uzumaki sent here. After that, and realizing what a burden and task she was carrying on her shoulders, Kushina envied Shingen and his freedom, even if he didn't realize it. Their animosity only furthered when, after coming in terms with his condition, he had suddenly began to become one village's most respected and loved people, a protector of civilians and all those that needed it. He was even nominated and nearly won a position of Hokage, when she, holder of Kyuubi, the best of Uzu and chosen representative of Uzumaki, in Kushina's mind, wasn't even mentioned. Granted, she was happy and glad that Minato had won, but it still hurt her pride that she, a proper Uzumaki in her mind, was so easily passed over. Needless to say, her relations with Shingen did not get any better. At the same time, Kushina had once tried to make friends with Ika Azuma, the adoptive daughter of Mito Uzumaki, her last apprentice and her closest friend in aid in her last years. At first, it was so that Kushina could gain a better chance of being handpicked by Mito as an apprentice over some civilian girl, as Kushina really thought, but later it was out genuine desire to be friends, as Kushina had grown to respect Ika. Unfortunately, after the death of Mito and Kushina's ascension into a status of Jinchuriki, Ika didn't remain at her side, instead becoming a medical expert and combat medic in Third Shinobi War, saving countless lives during the conflict and becoming known as the White Maiden of Life. She did not stay with Kushina and supported her, as the redhead had wanted her to do, to be her friend and one she could rely on. Instead, Ika became Tsunade's equal and, along with her husband, had overshadowed Kushina at nearly every turn. The initial desire for friendship turned into a bitter feeling of resentment and jealousy, as even now, there were far more people in Konoha that praised Ika over saved lives, than Kushina for holding Kyuubi away. At least now her children were getting the respect and admiration she deserved, while Ika's and Shingen's children are nothing more than civilians, as their parents now. However, it seems as if her eldest son, Naruto, had somehow attracted the attention of Shingen, and the old scoundrel did not waste time to use him to his advantage. Kushina knew well enough that Shingen would not act kindly and considerably towards her son if he did not intend to use him against her and Minato, something Kushina could not allow. Naruto may have been her and Minato's less impressive child and had left a lot to be desired, such as obedience and humility, But he was still her child and she would not see a member of her line being used against her without him even understanding it. Minato made allowed for Naruto to pass exam early, but Kushina didn't agree with it, as she wanted him to be there for Menma and Narumi. She needed her older son, though flawed and less important than her beloved twins, to be with them, to serve as their support and back them up in their path. And this meant that he needed to graduate with them, and while he may be older than them. What she and Minato had done was a punishment meant to teach him humility and obedience to his family, which was necessary after that public humiliation. He may have avoided his family, brought countless disgraces to her and Minato and now even sought to break away from her, but she would not allow him to act like he is the most important thing in the world. Taking in a breath, she spoke up. "Naruto, there you are. I have been waiting for you for quite some time," Kushina said, without even greeting him or his friends. "You've nearly made your twins miss their first lesson when you did not show up. How can you explain this behavior of yours, young man?" "Yeah, because of your stupid ass, we nearly got punished for arriving late," Menma added up, with Naruto simply looking at him with a blank sight. "And where did you go after the academy, and who are these two with you?" Narumi asked arrogantly of him. "Is this fake red hair or something? Well, if she's trying to copy mom, she's failing badly, if you ask me." Akemi looked insulted at this jab, with Hiryu narrowing his eyes on the girl. "I'd watch your tongue if I were you, Narumi." Naruto had to hold himself from slapping the girl in public. They are members of Uzumaki clan, are very distant cousins, to be exact. And unlike the shrimps like you, she doesn't need to cosplay as their parents to look beautiful and attractive, at least in the case of Akemi, though I suppose Hiryu would be getting some attention from women, given that he does look far less repulsive than most people. Akemi blushed red at the praise, while Hiryu nervously chuckled at this compliment. "I think I'll take that as a compliment, but you are correct in this regard. I often do see girls and even some of the older women looking at me like I'm on the sale or something. It's kinda satisfying in its own way, but also really creepy at times." Hiryu commented to Naruto, before turning to Kushina and her kids. "Apologies, Lady Kushina, but we have already met. Your husband and you have visited our shop a couple of months prior, ordering a new kimono for you and your daughter. Young man, I believe I haven't asked you or your sister to speak up, so do not butt into a conversation." Kushina cut Hiryu off without any sense of politeness, making him shut his mouth. "Now, Naruto, I am still waiting for an answer. Why did you miss your class? I think that is pretty obvious already. Didn't Hokage tell you?" It was an obvious question for Naruto, which made Kushina stiffen up at this one, before she answered. "Naruto, I believe we have had this discussion already a couple years ago. You will graduate, but only when you are ready for it, and in my opinion, you best do so with your twin siblings." Kushina said sternly to Naruto. "You are not ready, and I will have words with your instructors about this negligent attitude towards their responsibilities. Now, you still have to apologize to Sume for your that's filthy rich coming from you. And as for that apology, how about that woman apologizes to Akemi here for those Minji mutts and their blatant assaults on her?" Naruto stood his ground, with Hiryu listening to this one closely, while Akemi has decided to quietly hide behind her brothers and Naruto's backs. "Listen, loser, don't go disrespecting our mom. She and dad were right to have given us our titles, and you are just jealous of all the fame and stuff we get. And what about this redhead and apologizing? Sure, she's got some nice looks and all, but she should be proud that shinobi are taking a notice of her. After all, it's always cool to have a shinobi checking you out. That's what civilian girls are for, to look cute and nice for taking, as Ero-sanin told me." Menma loudly proclaimed, with Hiryu responding to this one. "That's quite a statement, coming from a preteen kid. I would be careful with that mouth of yours, because you never know when that same mouth will get permanently shut for insulting one's sister." Hiryu's tone immediately changed from a nice and rational one, into one of cold and determined threatening, with Menma and Narumi taking a step back, while Kushina glared at him. "Lady Kushina, perhaps it would be best if you had imparted some manners about etiquette into your son's head. It does not befit a future clan head to have manners of a, well, I would like to say a tavern keeper, but that would be insulting of them." Hiryu let out the smallest of smiles out, with Menma practically growling at Hiryu, while Naruto actually smiles at it. "I believe the term you are looking for, Hiryu, is a deviant, if I am not mistaken." Naruto added up to this statement. Yes, that does sound about right. Hiryu openly agreed with Naruto, with Kushina glaring at the two of them. Mind if Akemi and I go on ahead? We'll wait at the exam room. Sure thing. Naruto agreed with them, with Akemi and Hiryu leaving the conflicting family members alone. Shouldn't you two brats go as well? Your fan clubs and fanatics must be starting to shift towards that emo and his shrieking banshees. Naruto simply stated, with the two deciding to head towards their class, with Kushina's agreement. Naruto, tell me, are you acting like this because your father and I've made Menma and Narumi into heirs? I've already told you, that they have what it takes to be heirs and are better suited for it. You are acting like a bratty child, who can't have another toy for himself. If you had stopped being such a child, you would see that Minato and I've made the right decision. Kushina argued to her son. Now, what is it with your new cloths and that claymore you are wearing? Did you steal them from someone again? For the 100th time, I'm not a thief. And these are actually a gift from our relatives. Naruto simply stated to her. And as for all this acting, how would you react when you've been metaphorically fucked over by your own parents? Let me tell, it tends to make people bitter, resentful and quite angry, just like it happened to me. Now, if you are done, I've got an exam to take and a headband to receive. Naruto was moving towards the door, before he was grabbed by Kushina who glared at him. And I've said, that you will not be taking that exam, not until your siblings graduate. She gripped Naruto's hand tightly. Now, what you will do, is go to my friend, apologize to her, and after that you and will have a long and profound talk about your attitude, is that clear? Kushina nearly shouted at him, nearly yanking Naruto's arm off, until Naruto has had enough and released himself from her by pushing out of his arm chakra, nearly making Kushina fall onto her butt at this one. What in the? Naruto, get back here this instant. If you don't come here and apologize, then you can go and fuck yourself. Naruto shouted out at Kushina, stunning her with his anger and rage. When will you fucking get it through that thick head of yours, that those damned brats are the last things I want to see on daily basis, along with you and that blonde idiot of a husband? You've denied me everything I had ever wanted and took away from me what was rightfully mine, but enough is enough. I'm going there and I am graduating, and after that, you can kiss me goodbye, because I'll be leaving that damned house of yours. With that, Naruto headed to the building, with Kushina finally catching on what he was saying. Naruto, you can't mean that. I won't allow you to leave your house. I am your mother, and you will listen to what I have to say to you. Kushina shouted at Naruto, who stopped and looked at Kushina with a heated glare, before stating in a cold fury to Kushina. I don't have a mother. Naruto stated with cold fury to Kushina, closing the door behind him, with her standing there with a stunned expression. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.